There's almost as many seasons as there are legends in Apex, and today we're going to be ranking all 27 legends in Apex Legends Season 25 for general overall power and playability. Let's go. No legend in Apex is worthless, but some are clearly underperforming in an F tier or bottom tier. We do begin with Caustic. Caustic absolutely is not terrible, but when it comes to the general playability of the game, he pretty much can be beaten out by every other legend. This means when it does come to playing offensively with the gas traps and the gas grenade, or just defensively with the gas traps. Of course, how much you can succeed with Caustic in really any legend does come down to how you want to play, the mode you are playing, and the playstyle you are trying to achieve. So if you are only playing ranked, Caustic is a little higher than the F tier I am placing him in. The biggest issue these days is that as gas is weak and it's easy to avoid, it's also mostly a non-factor where you can just run or walk right through it and just be completely fine. He's a legend with incredible potential, and I think a buff to Gas Daddy is going to come sooner than later. Seer is the second F legend, and while Caustic has some ranked viability and minimal pub viability, Seer is pretty much forgettable across the board. Basically, every recon legend brings more to the table for team play, and if you are trying to run around and frag out, a legend like Season 25 Sparrow or even Vantage will be more useful and usable. That being said, Seer's tactical has been improved since the start of last season, which is helpful, but his ultimate is still a huge third-party magnet, and honestly, really forgettable compared to many of the other more powerful ultimates in Apex. If you want to be that rat finder in ranked, then he has a little use via his passive, but otherwise, I would look elsewhere. In D tier, we're going to have one underwhelming legend, and for me, it's one of my top 3 most played legends in a previous main of mine, and this is Bloodhound. The Hound's days as the top dog recon and fragging legend have been long gone for a while now, and while there are some scenarios where a wall hack or movement speed boost in the ultimate is going to be good, there's legends that do what Bloodhound provides, but much better. Crypto and Vantage bring way better passive information gathering, Sparrow has way better scanning or tracking, and ballistic speed boost in his ultimate not only works for himself, like the Bloodhound ultimate, but the entire team, and you're getting extra benefits as well. With the skirmisher rework of last season, it could have been really fun to give Bloodhound a power boost so we could run the OG squad of Blood, Path, and Wraith. Bloodhound is in drastic need of some sort of buff, but for me personally, I hope we don't go too far into the wall hack meta like we were a few years ago. For C tier, we have a few legends who are fine for overall playability, but not necessarily great. I will state that if you are a ranked warrior, this is where a few of our legends start to really be much better in this more competitive and typically slower paced mode, for those of you that are not running it down in top of masters or pred lobbies. A legend who saw an insane amount of competitive viability is Crypto, but for our general power list, he's a little lower for the average player. Of course, it's worth mentioning now that this legend ranking is not an ALGS comp or ranked specific tier list, because in these modes, Crypto is much higher than the C tier legend I am putting him in. But when it comes to the overall game, and specifically with how fast the game has gone over the past 2 seasons, Crypto has had a much harder time keeping up. The faster time to kill and lower peak shields and overall buffs to the assault and skirmisher legends have made it harder for Crypto to use his drone manually. Of course, remotely sending it out for scans and distraction is good, but as a whole, it's hard to compare a legend where everything revolves around a tactical drone you can control compared to someone like Ashe, Sparrow, Alter, Horizon, and so on, who can bring a ton of both combat and team perks to the squad. In a similar vein as Crypto, we also have Gibraltar. Prior to the nerf of shotguns, Gibby was an extreme powerhouse because the meta really supported jiggle peeking through his tactical dome, and of course support legends had a lot more viability 2 seasons ago with all their buffs. Fast forward to today, shotguns are still pretty decent, but are simply just not the meta right now. Jiggle fighting with SMGs or the powerful P2020s just is not the best, and I would argue that the buff fire rate of the EVE 8 also is not going to really reward that more tactical playstyle that Gibby does bring. Extra protection via that gun shield and the powerful ultimate to force movement is a nice thing to have, but in the larger meta, they are not as dominant as they once were. Gibraltar is better than C if you want a ranked legend, but truthfully, I would look at Lifeline or Newcastle if I was solely concerned about my ranked usefulness and I still wanted to play a support legend. Another one of these support legends is up, and it is Conduit, but unlike Gibraltar having a lot of ranked prowess, I think Conduit is a little better in the overall gameplay sense. She isn't as highly regarded as a ranked option, but for me, she is still a better pub stomper. Conduit's passive speed boost is a nice thing to have, although it's less noticeable now that all legends can run to skirmisher legends faster. Her tactical shield regeneration is a nice thing to have, and it did have a buff recently, but for the most part, it just is not as good as it really needs to be effective mid-fight. There was a time where healing items were much harder to come by as well, and this made the ability way more valuable. This is not the case today, though. Her ultimate for me is the most intriguing part, as it's awesome to stop advancements and flush enemies out of cover. And for a support legend to have all that support perks plus a little control in there, I think she is pretty solid. If you want a very unique mix of these control and supportive properties, she's a fine pick. Our third recon legend is already here, and she's a legend that I do have a fairly difficult time ranking due to her overall versatility. This is because Vantage arguably has one of the most unique kits in the game, where on paper, she's a recon legend with a passive to identify enemy squad status. She also brings skirmisher capabilities through her tactical and even some aggressive assault properties through her ultimate sniper. When it does come to the overall general power of the game, her passive and even tactical just are not quite as useful or respectively fast enough to really be considered top tier. If you are playing ranked, always having a sniper in reserve is amazing, and this is especially true when there are so many 30-30 and G7 users these days. You can really drop someone that is trying to peek you. So for ranked Apex, she's like a mid A tier legend, but for everything else, Vantage just does not bring quite enough that Apex players are going to really need to excel at the top of the game. As we move into the tier of the great legends, be sure to hop into my community Discord to find others to play with, as playing with randoms kinda stinks. Next up is B tier, where we actually have more legends than usual. The drastic change to the TTK in the overall legend meta of season 24 has kind of made many legends not necessarily worse, but much less competitive than the longer TTK seasons prior. Not necessarily affected by those changes, but another great option in Apex is going to be Mirage. Mirage has continued to be a really solid all-around pub legend, whereas for the overall ranked portion of the game, or at higher skill levels at least, he's going to be less than ideal. I would say that if you're a sub-platinum player, Mirage is actually a little higher than I do have him ranked here, as less skilled players really just cannot deal with the clones as easily as a highly skilled diamond or higher player. If Mirage was a skirmisher legend, I think the class bonus of getting 50 health or shields upon a knock combined with the invisible healing would make him an absolute insane unit. But for now, Mirage is a great run around, have some good fun, bamboozling all your enemies type of legend. Watson sees a pretty drastic fall from my previous rankings for a handful of reasons, but I will start by stating that if you are exclusively playing ranked, she's a high A, maybe even S tier legend, as her ability to control space and slow things down is second to none. But the main reason for her fall into the B tier for me is the fact that the game has really changed substantially this past season, where aggressiveness is rewarded much more than those playing a little bit more passively. Legends that can reposition quickly and force movement have been key, but that being said, if you want a mix of that control and even support properties through her gen to replenish the team's shields, she is arguably the best pure control legend in the game. Our first assault legend is here, and it is Mad Maggie. Mad Maggie is a great all-around combat legend in Apex Season 25, where her tactical and ultimate can be greatly used to force enemies to scatter, cause damage, and honestly, confuse them greatly if you do manage to connect that wrecking ball. What keeps Mags a little bit lower on my list is that her passive of the shotgun boost isn't really necessary, and what Maggie brings can be far outclassed by the other assault legends and even some skirmisher legends. If you want to pick a legend who is made for push plays, and that is pretty much it though, she's the one. Bangalore is second up to Mad Maggie, and this placement probably will surprise a lot of players, but I haven't quite seen the same value in Bangalore that she previously used to have. The nerf to her smokes, the digital threat, plus a handful of other changes over the seasons have made her a little less than ideal when it does come to the meta. Yes, having the smokes to conceal your team and rotate is awesome, but there's others that can kind of do similar things. Plus her Rolling Thunder has a pretty long cooldown and does not really hold the same value as something like an Ashport or even a Lifeline ultimate. Bangalore for ranked is a little higher, but for general play, she's a great legend, just not amazing like she once was. Rampart right now is a really solid legend who borders on the A tier for the overall meta of the game. Rampy's ability to deal extra damage, block areas, hold choke points, and more with those tactical amped walls gives her a ton of viability at all stages of the game, beginning, mid, and lower rank, upper rank. Her ultimate minigun is also superb at applying pressure to third parties, destroying the entire squad. I think her passive is the weakest part of her kit, as having a boost to LMGs is just okay right now. However, the Rampage is a pretty good option, and it's worth using if you are running Rampart. I think the biggest thing with Rampart is that many assault legends are going to be able to counter her walls, and she isn't really the prototypical powerhouse legend you would expect to use in pubs. Rampart for ranked gets a high A tier placement, so keep that in mind if that is your focus. Capping off the great tier of legends is Catalyst. Catalyst slightly edges out all the other control legends simply because she does what they can all do, but is a little bit quicker, which is definitely needed in today's fast-paced meta. Enter a building, reinforce or rebuild doors, tactical trap hallways and entrances, and when you really need to rotate, she has that ultimate dark veil. Catalyst is my preferred solo queue ranked legend due to her simplicity, so keep this in mind if you want an efficient but useful legend for ranked. I think in pubs she falters a little bit, but when it comes to a legend with a complete package, Cat is pretty solid. We are now moving to the A tier of Legends of Amazing, but be sure to drop a comment down below with the legend that you think needs to get buffed as soon as possible, Gas Daddy, or maybe even a legend that you think needs a nerf. Also, drop a like on this video. It's the 25th season of Apex Legends, and it also marks my 5th year on YouTube. With that, let's talk about Horizon. Horizon has had some nice skirmisher class buffs during the middle of season 24, which was a great siphon of 50 health or shields upon a knock, plus a bonus tactical charge. However, that extra attack charge was removed at the start of season 25. Horizon has some incredible power even after the dozens of nerfs over the years that she has received. Her tactical to assault enemy teams or get away, and her black hole to completely distract or snag enemies up. There's a lot of great passive abilities these days, but Horizon in my eyes has a top 3 passive in all of Apex Legends, where the movement and no fall fatigue greatly increases your elusiveness and your power potential. Regardless of the mode, pubs or ranked, you can't go wrong with her if you are looking to be more aggressive with a little side of team play. One of Apex's most free moving legends is Valkyrie, who has been a pretty reliable all-around choice for a little bit now. Valk is the ultimate legend for rotations with the squad, making this process a little trivial in ranked, where she also has some combat fighting potential due to that passive jetpack. Her tactical isn't bad, but it's also not quite as good as like a fuse cluster or the aforementioned Horizon lift. Valkyrie is a really great option these days if you want a mix of movement and recon perks while also being great at surviving fights due to that elusiveness she has, kind of like Horizon. Another really amazing choice for the movement warriors out there is going to be Revenant. Revenant has had a ton of ups and downs in a complete rework, but where he is today is equal parts movement warrior and the squad's tank. Obviously, Apex doesn't really have tank roles, but in terms of a legend with the pure ability to soak up damage, Revenant in the ultimate is going to make it very difficult for an enemy to get you down with one magazine from the majority of Apex's weaponry, which does mean you will have a big edge on them in a one-on-one fight. The ability to leap in and leap out of an engagement also is pretty substantial to increase your play options, whereas prior to Sparrow being introduced, there was no legend that could flank or climb up on an enemy like Revenant can. The only negative that I see that does hold Revenant back a little bit is going to be his massive hitbox, which makes him pretty beamable, and also he doesn't have any specific team abilities. Arguably, Apex's most steady legend is going to be Loba. She still provides quite a bit for the entire team through that black market to get loot, and I actually think she's a little slept on. Her upgrades to get an extra item, gold bags, or make her tactical better are excellent. Her bracelet is the ultimate getaway tool, or even something that can be used to get to height. I think her passive is what keeps her knocked out of S tier, but if you want to take more fights and spend less time looting, she's going to be awesome for this. She's also pretty solid in an endgame ranked match, where if you are struggling for that extra loot and you can't leave your building because there's too many enemies around, she is going to be good for this. I will state that I think Loba is a little more of a convenience legend rather than a legend who has a lot of raw power. Wraith today is another legend that is pretty great across the board as an all-around fighting and even a little team traversal type of legend. Wraith's passive is pretty forgettable, but honestly, the ability to get a little notification when an enemy comes into your area maybe is a tad underrated, or if they are staring at you with a sniper. The tactical to reset was buffed in the middle of last season, and it is much more usable if you are taking the appropriate upgrades. The reset possibilities are truly endless with this, and if you need to rotate through an open area or you gotta be a little bit more creative in a fight, her ultimate portal is definitely still solid. Wraith, I think, falters a little bit when compared to the other S tier legends, mostly because her kit is kind of dated, but honestly, you can't go wrong with the original Sweat Lord of Apex Legends. Apex's first new legend, Octane, also sees a pretty rock solid placement of A these days. Not necessarily better than Wraith or the legends before him in A tier, but Octane is one of the all-around best at just having a good time to pub stomp and run around. He was far better last season when you could get a knock and get an ultimate pad back, but I think what gives Octane a lot of legs right now is that you do get 50 health or shields upon a knock, which leans into him nicely being able to use that stim a little bit more. Not a lot more to explain about Apex's resident speedster. If you want a simple but effective legend that can play very freely, Octane is going to be it. If you want a rank choice, so I probably would look elsewhere. He's more like a high C, low B for ranked Apex. Rounding out the A tier is going to be Newcastle, who is honestly so close to being S tier for the all-around game, but when you are kind of just running and gunning, what the castle brings is not necessarily what you're going to need. If you are solely playing ranked, I would argue that Newcastle is easily a top 5 legend through his reset capabilities via the mobile revive, the tactical shield, and of course his ability to hold areas down with the ultimate castle wall. Newcastle sees a ton of pro viability, so there's clearly a lot of value there. I think his overall pick rate in ranked falters a little bit because he just isn't considered a fun legend, kind of like the Gibraltar effect, but his usefulness is pretty much second to none. Now we have S tier, the legends who you can confidently use in pubs or ranked and in lower or upper skill brackets. In this tier for me, there are no major weaknesses, and if they do have one, they can massively make up for it in other areas of their gameplay. One of Season 24's premier legend buffs revolved around Ballistic, and to be honest, I was kind of expecting a nerf to his tactical when Season 25 rolled around, but Ballistic was unchanged. There's so much going on for the dad of Apex right now, where the ultimate can help the team in fights through all of its extra perks. The tactical almost immediately shuts enemies' ability to one mag you, and his passive sling is incredible this season specifically. There are a few really great guns right now that do benefit from being in the sling. The Devotion, since it gets that turbocharger with full attachments, the Rampage, G7, 30-30, there's a ton of great options, and I would say that Ballistic is one of the best team combat fighting legends in all of Apex if you are looking to play together with your squad. Since Ash and Ballistic have been so relevant for the past 2 seasons, the Assault class has a little bit overshadowed Fuse, as he has kind of been the forgotten legend. However, Fuse's power is too good to not recommend at the top of the game, equal parts Fragger for general play and ranked warrior to force enemies to scatter from their cover. Fuse also getting to hold extra nades per stack means you can rock a Rampage with tons of thermites or even a bow check with frags now. Fuse's ultimate may not be the strongest ultimate in the game, but if you do connect an enemy to the fire, they are in big trouble. Fuse is the ultimate pressure legend in Apex, so if you want to constantly force enemies to be moving or farm a ton of damage, Fuse is the one. Somewhat the opposite of Fuse and Ballistic is our premier support legend in Apex's meta, Lifeline. I debated a little between having Lifeline or Newcastle for the top spot, but I think what Lifeline brings is a little bit more usable and universal when it does come to the general play of the game. Her tactical healing drone is quite good to get the team back to full health after a fight, or even heal them mid-fight. The remote revive I think has some slight more value to actually help clutch up an engagement, whereas Newcastle's mobile revive is a little more reliant on your other teammate to support you as you do pick up that squad mate. Overall, Lifeline is so good, and I would argue that if you are new to Apex, she's a top 3 legend for beginners or those looking to improve. It's been a couple seasons now since my personal main Pathfinder saw a pretty hefty grapple nerf and some additional nerfs to the zipline plus upgrades, but Season 25 sees Pathfinder get substantial buffs to his kit. Path Zip has a 50% damage reduction baked right into it right now, and he can also get the ability to get a second grapple charge or even a second zip through upgrades. And Rejoice, Path's grapple is now back to the variable cooldown, making him feel much more free. All of these buffs mostly solidify Path as a top dog again, and I think the only major drawback of Path is his massive hitbox size, which pretty much makes him like a walking refrigerator. In a lot of ways, and on equal footing for combat, we have Season 25's brand new legend Sparrow. Remember, my list is not for ranked, as I don't think Sparrow brings the most value team play to the table, but when it does come to the overall game and actually excelling in fights, Sparrow is top notch. Sparrow's movement is unique, quick, and at the moment, it's hard for enemies to predict as they have never had to expect players to do a double jump in the middle of a fight. Sparrow's tactical is pretty solid to watch your back, as placing it in chokes or at entrances can give you a nice quick alert as to enemies' advancements. It's also not too bad to drop on the ground as you push up to distract enemies to have them shoot that trap. Sparrow's ultimate is actually insane though. The damage it can stack up is massive in fights, and while I don't think it's great to just farm pure damage, if you use the ultimate in an engagement while also having the health regen upgrade, you are pretty much unstoppable. Drop the ultimate, maybe also a tactical scan, push in, farm enemy teams. Time will tell if Sparrow is a ranked contender, but if you just want to play Apex and enjoy what Apex is all about, good movement and high octane gameplay, he is pretty great. Ash had over a 30% pick rate last season for the top players, and there's a good reason. But first, it's worth stating that since Ash saw her buffs at the start of Season 24, she has had a handful of nerfs to her upgrades, the passive timer, the ultimate speed, and she even lost the ability to see where players are dying with her passive at the start of Season 25. Truthfully though, none of that really matters. Yes, it lowers her overall skill potential, but her core usefulness is pretty much still there. Ash is so good at taking fights, maneuvering around enemies, and even getting out of trouble because of her passive. Her tactical is probably the most slept on thing these days, but being able to hold down areas with a 15-second snare or have 2 charges to farm a quick 40 damage on enemies is pretty clutch. Any legend that mixes in these highly aggressive properties with some team use case via that phase breach is going to be on top of Apex's meta. If you have not learned to love Ash, you need to, because she's probably not going to get many changes, if any changes, as Season 25 progresses. A legend who continues to see use cases across the entire meta of the game is going to be Alter. Alter in my eyes is kind of like the prototypical legend, and I would put her and Ash in an S+ tier if I had it. Alter can really just do it all. Fighting with her portal through walls, scanning enemies with the tactical, quick loot bonuses through the passive, reset the team via the ultimate, transport the team through the ultimate in tough situations. She can also get the support class perks or the recon class perks through her upgrades. Alter came out a year ago this season, and it has taken longer than it probably should have, but if you haven't used Alter since her season 21 introduction, you need to give her another shot. The only drawback I will state is that if you want to purely play more solo and not really worry about coordinating with your squad, she might falter a little bit, as her kick can highly depend on how well your squad does play together. I've been streaming on Twitch, so drop a follow there if you have any Apex questions. Also, don't forget to check out this video on screen if you want more on Apex's weapon meta. This video will be out shortly, and as always, happy gaming, legends.